Hello, Drunk Theology fans. Good to see you today. I am so happy to be here with you and looking forward to our lesson this morning. We are now in Long Beach, back in Long Beach. Of course, I was back in Las Vegas for a while. I'm going to be going there again very soon, which I don't mind. Not that I'm a big gambler or anything. In fact, I don't gamble at all. I'm too cheap. Anyway, but no, I'm just here to let you know that we are going to be dropping another episode Friday morning for God and Politics. So stay tuned for that. It's been a very busy week in the news and things going on in the States, and just wanted to gather some information up before I make my little presentation there. So be ready for that. It'll be a good podcast as well. And speaking of podcast, if you don't have time to watch this video, if you will go ahead and just look to our podcasts that are on Apple and Spotify, or if you are watching this on Instagram or Facebook, just go ahead and feel free to click like on there, and you can follow the LinkedIn or the Linktree link to go to all the places that we have this podcast and video vlog available for you. So that way you can watch it on the platform of your choice. And please remember my Patreon channel and support it, because we're in need of support there, and it'll be a good thing. I'm still looking into having the series of tapes that I'd promised professionally digitized. It's just not feasible to do it in-house in real time, and then trying to correct all the anomalies. So be praying with me on that. We're trying to find someone who is able to do that in a relatively quick manner, and professional as well. Also, if you remember, please click subscribe on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, and click on the bell to receive any notifications. And feel free to make any comments, and I will respond to them. I love doing that. And be sure to let your friends know about Drunk Theology. Okay, dispensing with that, we're going to go ahead and continue in our lesson. If you'll remember, we're covering a change of perspective, and we're looking at the book of Exodus chapter 20, the Decalogue, also known as the Ten Commandments, and looking at it from the perspective of the first way we looked at it was through the fact that God gives three commands that have to do with our relationship with Him, and it's all in relation to how we're to conduct ourselves with Him, and how we're to honor and give glory to His name. And He specifically uses His name in the text. If those of you are saying, well, what's His name? It's there in the other two studies. I cover it. Not, I cover it in somewhat detailed, but go there, and just that alone changes your perspective when you come to the understanding of the name of God. It changes your perspective when you read the scriptures. It changes your perspective when you read the words of Christ. It's just like, wow, it opens up the grace and the love of God, and the power of God, and the righteousness of God, in just some tremendous ways, and gives a clear understanding. And most believers aren't even aware of that. So I encourage you to learn about that. But we're going to look at it now, starting at the fourth commandment. And we're going to cover three of them today. But the fourth commandment I want to spend a little bit of time on, because it is key to understanding these six commands or seven commands that follow the first three. And so, or I'm sorry, the first four. It has, it covers the last six commandments, because I always forget about the Sabbath day, which is terrible, right? Especially on Sabbath. Anyway, but that being the fourth command, but this fifth command, we look at this fifth command, and it really sets the table, as it were, for understanding the rest of the commands. Just as the first command set the table for understanding commands 2, 3, and 4, the fifth command sets the table for understanding 5 through 10 or 6 through 10. And we need to have a good foundation. And that really what this is about foundation. So taking the reading from Exodus chapter 20, and let's take a look here. Oh goodness, look at that. That's why I've always kind of still liked the old-fashioned Bible. There we go. Okay. So we will look at verse 12. You know, it's funny, you know, when you with your physical Bible, you just turn to things immediately because you know where it's at because you've worn out that page, you've worn out that section. You have little highlighter marks, and I'm not very good at that in the digital age, but I like the digital age as well. So, but I have both. But for this session here, I have a little Apple iPhone of mine that I'm using. And here in the 12th verse, it says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that Yahweh your God is giving you." So we have this command. It's the fifth command, and it sets the foundation for the following 5 commands. Just as I said, it bears repeating. The first command set the foundation for commands 2 through 4. This sets the foundation, and so it changes a little bit of the perception. It doesn't change the overall meaning of the commands, but in many ways it changes our perception and begins to direct us to the heart. That's how I see it, and you'll see that as we continue toward the end of this series. But it says, "Honor your father and your mother, that you may live long in the land that Yahweh your God is giving you." You know, Paul talks about this command in Ephesians 6. He refers to it in a different sense. Says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So that you may live long in the land." He continues on with that same precept, that same concept of promise, that this is the first commandment that was given with a promise. And so we look at this, and some might even say, obey children, obey your parents in the Lord. Well, that means only if they're saved. No, because you're in the Lord, you should be obedient to your parents. That's really the concept that's there, and the other concept that's there is that you're to obey your parents in the Lord. For some children, they may be orphaned, they may be separated from their parents, they may be their parents have checked out. I mean, they're sad cases. I mean, I worked at Union Rescue Mission as a chaplain for a season, and it's sad to see children, and sometimes the only constructive, loving individuals in their life are people of God, and so they become their parents in the Lord, as it were. Sunday school teachers can be parents in the Lord. So it kind of broadened. Paul kind of broadened that concept. But I want to focus in on the command here: honor your father and your mother, and look at it from that perspective. Because honoring, what does it mean? What does it mean to honor your father and your mother? I mean, Paul gives us the one thing, obey, but is it only obedience? Is it merely obedience? And I believe that if we look at this as the foundation to understanding commands 6 through 10, we begin to see that it's more than just mere obedience, but rather it is the way that we live our lives, even in our adulthood, even though we are now gone, from our parents' home, and maybe even they have gone on to glory. I mean, it tells us you honor them by the way you conduct your life. The manner in which you conduct your life brings honor to your parents. When people look at someone, and it's a shame, and I understand, that there are like really loving, good parents that have adult children that are not, that are wicked, some of them, and it's sad, and it may have not even been anything the parent had done or hadn't done. And that happens. That's life. That's life on this planet. I mean, life is hard. I mean, that's the one thing that people need to, life is never going to be easy. And we have it pretty easy here in the States. I mean, we are, and forgive me if this seems crass, but I've seen and have worked in both spectrums. When you have individuals that are without a home, but they have cell phones and they have, you know, some, $150 pair of tennis shoes. And yeah, maybe they didn't pay for them, but the fact that in comparison to other nations, they look at them and say they're wealthy. One of the things I learned in working in inner city missions is that no one goes hungry. There's and if someone does, it's by choice or because they are so strung out on drugs and alcohol that they don't care for themselves. They don't give proper attention to themselves. But the truth of the matter is, no one goes hungry. It amazed me when I started working in inner city missions how that uh, they talk about an obesity crisis in the United States, and hey, here's example number one. But you know, it's amazing. When in my mind I think of homeless individuals, I think of people who are withdrawn and thin and emaciated, and it's the opposite. And part of it is because one of the gentlemen there that was a sociologist explained to me. He said the reason that they have this kind of uh, problem is because they eat comfort food. He says if you were to go and offer them a balanced meal, I mean, like a nice spinach green salad and some asparagus tips with a small portion of protein, and it could be elegantly prepared. I mean, they're not interested. They need comfort. They need comfort, and so they have comfort food, and so that's why all the bakery items and the Starbucks items that are donated and things like that. I mean, they just fly off the shelves um, because they need comfort. But you see, the question goes back to honoring. How do we honor our parents? How do we bring honor to them? And it's by the way we conduct our lives. How we conduct our lives is the key thing. I've had people in my congregation when I pastored, that were ministerial students, some of them going to the mission field. Um, and, they'll come back with stories of how, how they love the culture that they went and ministered to or considering going to. And, they love the way that they treat their elderly, and they love the way that they treat their parents, and that's the way it should be. That's the way it ought to be. But I never saw it translate into their own personal life situation. I'm not going to say never, but there were a few I remember that it didn't. You know, they still continued on with the bad practices, and they essentially, in the rearing of their children, that will have some effect. And it's like we can admire it in others, but can we apply it to ourselves? And that's why the command is given. It's like you need to examine this part of who you are. That's why David said, he goes, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. See if there be any wicked way with me, and lead me in the way everlasting. There's this concept that we need to look at and say, okay, am I honoring to my parents? Is my life honoring them? I think I mentioned before that, that was one of the things I always wanted to bring to my parents. And I wasn't even a believer as a child necessarily. And later on, when I did become a believer, I wanted to honor them. I wanted them to be proud of me. Think of it in that way. I wanted them to be proud of me. I wanted them to be able to say, that's my son. And for them to be proud. And the truth is, and especially my mom and dad they were proud of us just because we were their offspring. But I wanted to go beyond that. I had a heart that I wanted to go beyond that. See, God loves you, even though and He loves me, even though we're sinners. Even though we can't, in some ways, escape or help ourselves from this body of death, as Paul put it. Even though we can't, he loves us just because we're His. We belong to Him. The question is do we want to belong to Him? Do we want to be a part of who He is? Do we want to take that into account in our lives? And so we have to look and say, okay, I want to have a heart. And that's why the scripture command is given. Honor them, that you may have a long life. And there's even this little carrot that's put out there. And it's not really so much like God saying, okay, you honored your parents, boom, zap you with a long life. It isn't so much that as much as the fact is that if you will follow these commands, the remainder of these commands, and attempt to live them, because I use that word attempt because no one has been able to completely obey them. No one except one. And He is no longer here on earth. He was resurrected and ascended. And that's, of course, I'm speaking of Yeshua, Mashiach, Jesus the Christ. And so the thing is no one is able to, but do you have a heart to attain that? To press toward the mark of the high calling of God in Christ. And so that's what this is about. It's like, honor your parents. And the result is people are going to appreciate you. You're going to live a good life. People will appreciate the fact that they see the goodness that's in your life, the honesty, the integrity, and they will appreciate you. And doors will open. Some doors will close. You will go through highs and lows in your life. And sometimes the lows last longer than the highs. That's just the way it is. Especially with cocaine. The lows are longer than that. Now, I'm not advocating that. I'm just drunk theology, right? But the thing is that we need to, if we will challenge ourselves to view the remaining commandments here through that lens, it'll change your perspective a bit. What drives you to serve God? What drives you to want to be in His presence? What compels you to stand up for Him, even in the midst of destruction, even while persecution may be at the door? You say, I'm going to follow Him. See, there has to be something that compels you. And what compels you is the love that you have in your heart to want to give out. You see, we talk about the love of God, and the love of God is received. We receive it, but it's not for us to hoard, but it's for us to give out and let it flow like a river. That's what it is about. And what drives us should be wanting to give out this love to a generation. That sounds too broad to me. Wanting to give this love out to a city. That's still too broad for me. Wanting to give his love out to my community. That may be a little more realistic. Wanting to give my love out to my family. That sounds even more realistic. Oh, I skipped a part. Giving that love out to my neighbor. Whoa. Well, now you're going too far, Chaz. You're going a little too far. You don't understand. You don't understand those people and what they did to me. You know what? I don't give a rip what they did to you. You know why? Because God doesn't give a rip what they did to you. What God cares about is how you respond to what has been done. That's what matters. That's what matters. How do you respond to what they did? See, that honors your parents. And so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself on regard to these commands. So, what are the commands? Well, we're going to look at two more. And hopefully we begin to see them through the vein of honoring our parents. So, the first one is, you shall not murder. You shall not murder. You say, well, that's easy. I haven't done that. Well, maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. Most likely you have. Jesus said that if you harbor ill intentions towards your brother, you've committed murder. Wow. Without a cause, he said, you're guilty of it. For as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. See, it all gets back to the heart. It all gets back to the heart. What's the driving force? It's what's in your heart. Is it love for God and love for people? Or is it love for self? See, a murderous heart behaves in such a way that it may not commit the act, but it writes the people off. It thinks ill of those individuals that you have that intention to. But let me challenge you even beyond that. See, the word here for murder in the Hebrew, covers causing human death through carelessness and negligence. That if you cause human death through carelessness or negligence, it's considered murder in the scriptures. See, we tend to always look at man's interpretation, and there's nothing wrong. Obviously, we need to have delineation so that we know how to try a person if they're involved in the death. But when it comes down to the brass taxes with God on his scale for measuring how things are going to be weighed in the end, carelessness and negligence, if it results in death, is murder. Because it was something that was within your control. It was something that you had control of. Did you go out and have, a few highballs or a couple of high alcohol content IPAs, some double IPAs, and get behind the wheel? Did it result in a horrible accident that ended the life of someone, your carelessness, yeah, we call it vehicular manslaughter, and it has its degree of punishment. We have to have that in any civilized society, a way of administering justice on this side. But as far as God is concerned, that careless act is murder. That negligent act is murder. You know, I believe in firearms. I love firearms. I own a firearm. I've had since I was 13. My father bought it for me. But I don't leave it around loaded and laying in the hallway. You know, I have it securely put away. I have the shells for it securely put away. I know how to, how to get to it, and I won't say how it's done, but it's done in an efficient manner. If someone were to come in, I could protect myself and my family. But I don't have it just lying loaded and thrown haphazardly in the hallway or in the living room, where someone can just walk in and get it. You know, my son has a CCW. He carries, because of his of the position he has, the traveling he has to do, makes sense. And while he but he always makes sure he may lay his weapon down for comfort in his home, but that weapon goes with him when he steps out, or when he goes, or when he just steps up to go to his room, or to do whatever else. There is a responsibility that comes with it. But anything, and we've heard reports of horrible things that have happened. You know, horrible things that have happened. You know, but it's because of carelessness. And God says, that's murder. Yeah, this is a hard. It's a hard line to have to go to. It's a hard line to say, wow, God's pretty tough. But it's because He's wanting us to be responsible, individuals, and to guard our hearts, as the Proverbs said. Guard our hearts, for out of it flows the issues of life. If we make sure that our heart is being, responsible and loving and caring, and taking account of not only ourselves but those around us, it makes a huge difference. What would be the driving force? Why would I do that? Because I want my parents honored. I wouldn't want my mother's name to be like associated with me running over someone because I was drunk. No, you act responsibly. You behave responsibly. Why? Because I want to honor my parents. I want their name to be a source of inspiration. That's Carmen's boy. That's James's boy. Something wonderful about that. I remember years ago when I went to Ludington, Michigan. I was 15. My dad sent me, long story short. Got to meet relatives. And I was greeted in the town. I mean, literally greeted in the town with fanfare. I went to my uncle's bar, and that he owned there, and people just oohed and awed over me, and he would tell people, who's it? And they would say, who's this? And he goes, this is James's boy. It was a proud thing. This is my brother James. It's his boy, and he's named after our dad, or my dad, Charles Hamilton Brown. And then people, oh my goodness, because my grandfather had a good name in that community. He was known in that community for saving that community's life during the Depression, because my grandfather was a butcher, owned his own farm, his own butcher shop, and he did not charge people during the Depression. He kept accounts and then burned the books when the Depression was over. Good name. Good name. And I want to honor that. I want to honor my father, my grandfather, my heritage. I want to honor my mother, my grandmother, their heritage. So I live right. I say, Lord, if I harbor anger towards someone, change me so that I'm not a murderer. See, it's all in what drives you. I want to honor my God. The next command, we'll cover it here, is you shall not commit adultery. You shall not commit adultery. That's a heavy one. See, I remember, especially as a young man, and you're excited about girls and what have you, and having been raised in Roman Catholicism and gone through catechism and First Communion and all the whole shebang, I knew about this command, and I thought I was okay. I just go out there and spread my seed everywhere, because I'm not committing adultery. I'm not married, and neither is the person that I'm with. It's not what the command is about. Not only, I should say, what it's about. Because you need to study the whole Scripture. And there's a whole passage in Leviticus regarding illicit sexual behavior. It's interesting. The word fornication, often translated in from the Greek in the New Testament, is the word pornuo, where we get the word pornography, and it means illicit sexual deviance or behavior. And so there's a list in Leviticus 18, and I'm not going to read the entire thing because it would take forever. But let me read you a portion of it. I mean, it basically is going to cover, sex with children, sex with women, sex with your own gender, and saying that we are not to do these things. Look at it. I can start it. It says, none of you shall approach any of his close relatives to uncover nakedness. So any close relative. I am Yahweh. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father or of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister, your father's daughter, or your mother's daughter. In other words, it's letting you know, even your stepsisters, even though they're not your blood, no, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. It says, whether brought up in the family or in another home, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your son's daughters or your daughter's daughters, or their nakedness is their own. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, brought up in your father's family. She is your sister. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father. So, it covers essentially, incestuous relationships. It covers relationships, that someone might have with a teenage girl or a teenage boy. Talks about even your aunts and your uncles. They're your relatives. And he goes on. That's from, that started at verse 6, and here I'm scrolling through this to get down to 19, or verse 24. Well, let's take it at verse 19. You shall not approach the woman to uncover her nakedness while she was in menstruation. And you shall not lie sexually with your neighbor's wife, nor shall you make yourself unclean. You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Molech, so profane the name of your God. God is interesting. That's thrown in there because God is saying, I view illicit sexual behavior as the same as sacrificing children. Ooh, think about that. the same as sacrifice, because within you are the generations of the future. It says, you shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. And you shall not lie with any animal, so to make yourself unclean. Neither shall any woman give herself to an animal to lie with it. It is a perversion. And he goes on to say that he's driving out all these other nations to make room for Israel because they have been involved in this type of behavior. But he's also letting them know, but if you do this, I'll drive you out too. And for a time, Israel was able to do it. But then they failed. And it's sad, because that's the thing that will destroy the family. Again, honoring the parents. See, all this goes back to, that type of behavior doesn't honor the parents. It doesn't honor the concept of the family. Because you'll notice in that passage in Leviticus there, it's about family. See, we've tried to redefine the family. We've tried to, what is a family, and we need to understand that is serving as a detriment to the concept that God has given to us. God has given us a concept for the family. So we need to understand this, that adultery covers a lot more than just being unfaithful to your wife. It covers all sorts of behavior. And some of you may say, well, but I can't help it. I love women. And I'm married and I have children and I'm responsible to them. I take care of them. They have their home. They have their clothes. They have their provisions met and exceeded. And I just love women. Well, I'm sorry, you can't do that. See, that's like saying, well, I'm a Christian adulterer. No, it doesn't mix. You may be a Christian who is struggling with adultery, but you're not a Christian adulterer. And if you will put your focus on saying, I am going to love God and I'm going to love people and I'm going to honor my parents, and you put your focus on the high calling of God, eventually those temptations will fade away. It may take years. There are some who say, well, but you said lying with a man is sin. If I'm a man, that's right. You can't say I'm a gay Christian. No, you are a Christian and you are struggling with this. I mean, I don't buy into this conversion therapy crap, okay? I don't buy into that. But one thing I do understand is that if Christ is at the center of your life, you will be consumed with that, and the other will fade away. That's what generally happens. Now, are you going to fall? Are you going to falter? Are you going to fail? Most likely, yes. But if the attitude is, well, I'm just going to go ahead and live this way, well, then you're not consumed with Christ. You're not being driven to bring honor to your parents or to bring honor to God. And that's the distinguishing mark. David's put it this way, and I'll close with this. He said, I will love you, O God. Because he knew he had to make a conscientious decision. It wasn't automatic, and it isn't. You have to determine, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to love God. And I'm going to follow his way. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I know that I'm going to fall. And I know I'm going to fail. But I believe that that's the best way. I believe it's the only way of salvation. I believe it's the only way for true peace and happiness. I believe it's the only way to have that shalom that I want in my life. And so therefore, I will follow. I will follow. I will love God. And it's a matter of the will. And yes, you will falter and fail. Look at David, who said those words. He faltered and failed big time. Had an affair with a woman and then killed the husband to hide the fact that he impregnated his wife, the man's wife. And when he finally, after a couple of years, came to grips with it, and Nathan the prophet went to him and he finally admitted it, he repented. But that's not to say that he was never tempted again. But he had the heart of saying, I'm going to follow. I'm going to falter and fail along the way, but I'm following. And that's really what it is. And so what's my driving force? I want to bring honor to God, and I want to bring honor to my parents, to my mother and my father, in the way I would conduct my life. Oh, you'll falter and fail, but you know what? Your parents will always love you. God will always love you. He'll never turn away. For I am with you always, Jesus said, even unto the end of the age. Amen. Well, anyway, I'm going to leave it there for today, and we'll continue this next week. But watch out on Friday. Hopefully I'll be having that up there sometime in the later morning, and we'll have a great time talking about God and politics and what's going on in our nation today with regard to this pandemic, real or not. God bless you, and I'll see you next week. Shalom.